On this episode, we discuss what's ahead for Season 5 and check in with former hosts Tony, Joh, and Evo Terra.
So whether you're a longtime fan or first-time listener, you'll enjoy this look back and forward with the Bangkok podcast.
Sawadee krap, eh? And welcome to the first episode of Season 5 of the Bangkok podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001, who now dreams of going back to Canada in the winter with one of those big-ass woks you find in Chinatown and using it as a sled. Go so fast.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 20 years ago, fell in love with paying Thai taxes because I can't read the form and the guy just fills the whole thing in for me. So I never left.
You got a tax guy? The tax guy you trust?
No, it's unreal. The regional tax revenue office is less than 10 minutes from my university. And so my university gives me, my tax form, like what I've paid, like the form, which I can't read. Right. And I figured this out, 8 years ago. They taught me how to do it. I just walk directly to the tax office. I never see the forms because I can't read the forms. And I just walk in and they see a white guy. They're like, oh, and then someone comes up to me and just takes the form. They just take the form. And then and then everything is done. So I see a guy back there like filling in my taxes and doing the form and stamping. They just take the form and they're like, it's like I'm a retarded child or something. This
is the one time in life where everyone assuming that you're a complete idiot actually has an upside.
That's right. So it's doing taxes. That is how I do taxes. I just walk to the revenue office and hand them and then
wander around the foyer looking confused.
No, and it's like they're these guys and they just immediately go to work on my taxes. Like they just take out the proper form. They're like, pull this out. They're filling this out, double checking this, filling this form in, adding this attachment, and they're doing everything. And then that's it. And then I just sign. So I love paying taxes in Thailand. They just do it for me.
And so I'm trying the tax form filler outer guy gets out, goes home in his Bentley.
Well, the funny thing is it's not like some accountant at my university who's taking care of it. I'm just going straight to the government office and, it's just, you walk in and they just know right away, like that you don't know what you're doing and you can't do it and the forms aren't going to be filled out. So they just take the form out of my hands. They're like,
that's a good idea.
Give me that, you sit down right here. You sit down right here.
Little dummy. Just sit there and play with a ball.
But it's great, man.
Not to get off on a tangent here on the first episode of Season 5, but it's funny you talked about this. I didn't know you were going to say this, but just today I had to change my password for the e-filing online tax thing, and I thought it was going to be a nightmare, but actually I used Google Chrome. The auto translate feature of Google Chrome worked really well.
Oh wow, yeah. So I've never filed electronically here. Like I said, I just walk right over to the office and just hand them the form. So I'm like, I'm back in the 1950s, but and I don't even know what it is. I don't keep track of it. I don't know, I typically get a refund every year, but it's like, I don't even know if they're doing it accurately or not. I don't do anything. I just hand it over.
Well, seems to be working all right.
That's right. Okay. We want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, Deborah Claire, who supports us at the show shout out level. Stick around after we're done talking about Season 5 to hear why Deborah deserves a medal for letting a Thai tour guide keep their dignity. And a huge thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons like Deborah also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about Greg's trip to Gau Samet last week, that's struggling in the face of COVID, how he felt getting charged 5 times the local rate for entry, as well as reports that Thailand might open up to travelers in October, and the difficulty of rolling out a COVID passport. To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
Maybe a good COVID passport would be to do like one of those needles that leaves a really big scar on your arm. Like some people have the keloid scar.
Yeah, or like a TB, like the little prong, the TB prong. Isn't that what that is?
Why don't you just go to a brand? Like,
that's right. COVID-19.
A big C with a check mark next to it. All right, everyone. Well, welcome to the first episode, mind-blowingly, of season 5 of the Bangkok podcast. This is also somewhat alarmingly, Ed, this is the 302nd episode that we are recording right now that we've done since season 1.
What do you mean? What do you mean since? Since the first episode. So this is the 302nd episode.
Yes, the first episode of season 1 dropped on May 17th, 2010. And we took a break for a few years. Then me and Evo started it, and then you took over in season 3, and we've been going strong ever since. So this is episode 302.
Damn.
Technically speaking.
Damn, yeah. That's crazy. Honestly, I think I've done close to half of those, right? That makes sense because I just finished 2 seasons, right? And there were 2 seasons before.
2 seasons of 72 episodes each, plus bonus shows, which we're not even counting here. So,
right.
Yeah, that's not counting bonus shows, which the patrons get.
Let me just say this then. Obviously, Tony and Evo were great co-hosts, but I've now been the co-host much longer than either of them were.
That's right. You have the stamina. Like I said in the bonus show, you are the co-host with the co-most.
Well, when I was a kid, my friends were dreaming about being astronauts and like NFL quarterbacks, and I was dreaming of being a podcast co-host.
Wow!
Like they had no idea what I was talking about. They didn't even know what a podcast was, but I saw the future.
Yeah, right. It's like a 9-year-old Ed in grade 3. He's still talking about this stupid thing. I don't know what he's doing.
No, it's been fun, man. It's so cool that you got a chance to talk to them, and you've got this whole being the real host, being the man from the beginning. It's kind of cool for you to have this long view, reaching all the way back to the ancient Tony Joe times.
That's right. Well, it's it's funny. Like we don't want to talk about it too much here because pretty soon we're going to get in. We have a quick interview checking in with Tony and Evo as well. So we're going to get both of them on in a minute here. But yeah, man. Like we've talked about this before, but when we started, if listeners, if you haven't heard the story yet, like Tony and I had no idea what we were doing. No one knew what podcasting was back in 2010. Like it was a thing, but when we told people what we were doing, they nodded and were like, yeah, sounds great. Might as well have told them like we were working on string theory or something.
Right.
But yeah, man, we just sort of made it up as we went. And it's funny though, because I'm super proud of the show and I'm proud of what all of us have contributed to it. But at the same time, when I look at the website and it's like Ed Knuth, season 2, 3, or 3, 4, 5, and then Tony, and then Evo season 2, and then Tony season 1, and then Greg season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm like,
that's a lot, man, dude.
Maybe.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I was like, maybe I should like take a break or something.
as long as you pay me more, I can take over for a couple weeks. No worries.
Yeah, all right, cool. You'll get 100% of the
of nothing,
zero ad revenue we make. But no, man, I think it's going well, and we discussed this very briefly on the bonus show we just recorded. But you and I had a conversation a while ago, and we're like, so what should we do for season 5? Like, should we change anything? Should we move anything around? And we were all like, honestly, we think we've got a pretty good format here. Everything is working. People respond well to the bits we do, the love, loathe, or live with, and all that stuff.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have any big ideas for changes, but I got some small ideas. I think we've talked about before about the difficulty of coming up with a truly new topic every week, and your point that you've already done 300 episodes. I think we should be more willing to grab a topic that you did earlier, either maybe with Tony or Evo, or maybe even during my first season 2 years ago, and then just updating it. Because, you and I spend most of our time trying to figure out, we got to find something that we haven't done before.
Yeah, right. Like, and we get it. Not every show can be,
right.
Like shing, brand new and shiny. So I'm down with that. I'm down. Like, there's a lot of evergreen topics that are worth revisiting because a lot's changed.
Stuff like you and Evo did a show on. I'm just off the top of my head. You did a show on like, are all are all expats weird, or that whole topic. And I think that's somewhat evergreen. I would like to talk about that.
Yeah. And that's what's great about this format too, is because, like we said, every new combination of hosts can provide some new insight, some new discussion.
Right. When I listened back on the earlier shows, some of those I want to chime in. I wish I got to get my voice out there.
So you're yelling at the speakers when you're listening to the podcast. No, that's not what I was saying.
we got to update this. No, that's one thing I want to do. And it could be interesting for listeners, because we do have a lot of old time listeners, but then it also reminds our new listeners that there is this back catalog.
Yeah, and I get emails quite often, messages from Facebook and etc. And people are like, "Hey, what about a show on this?" Or like, "Hey, have you guys ever thought about doing this?"
Right.
And about 90% of the time,
well, we did that.
Like, right. Here's a link. Yeah, we did that in season 2.
Yeah. But I mean, if we, I think you do a pretty good job of this, where, if we have a repeat guest, you're always like, well, here's Joe Schmo coming back. He was on episode whatever in season 2. Like, you're pretty good at that. But I think we should do more of that. I think we should reference our earlier shows more, and maybe even revisit the topics.
Yeah, the only downside of that is it means I've got to listen to the episode again and get a refresher.
And embarrass yourself, right?
And talking a little bit about the production side of things, I mean, it's funny when I get an email from someone or a message saying, "Hey, when you said this and this and this, did you mean this and this? And what does that mean?" Like, to be honest with you, listeners, once a show is done, like, it's out of my mind.
Mostly, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It's like I vaguely remember something about it, but I don't remember the specifics you say. Once you do a show every week for this long, like, they all just kind of bleed into each other, sort of like this one big amorphous blob of commentary on Bangkok.
Right. Doing this show has affected my attitude towards things like cancel culture. Like, I know we've talked about, I know we've talked about it before. I don't want to obviously get into that issue, but when you're just basically recording live, like, so I know technically we edit, but I mean, you don't do that much editing. I mean, the bottom line is this is close to a live show. It's unscripted, and there's no way so I've probably done 150 shows or 140 shows. So there's no way I can defend everything I've said in 140 shows.
I mean, I cut out the first half hour of outrageous swearing and cursing that we do before we start recording.
Right, but you know what I mean? It's like, so I'm sure someone could, I mean, maybe that means I have no future as an American senator. Because if someone combed through the archives of the Bangkok podcast, they could hear us talking about some pretty weird shit. But
that's interesting. Yeah.
Because there's, so I'm a little bit more understanding when you grab some tweet or some conversation that someone had 10 years ago and it sounds really bad, I'm like, well,
it's all out of context.
But it's also the person said 20,000 things that day, like when someone is just talking for hours, depending on what they are, like a host or a celebrity. Right. Anyway, I like winging it. I don't think I would like doing this if we had to follow a script or if it was too structured.
No, I agree. And I think this plays to our strengths too, because this is not easy. And I think I've got some skill in this, and so do you. But it's not easy to talk in a way that that people will be listening and possibly judging.
Right.
Anyone can sort of
plus you want
that with friends.
Plus you want to be interesting, or you want to be entertaining. But even though we act like idiots, we don't actually want people to believe we're really idiots. So there's always that problem.
Right. So we're actually very, very intelligent.
Of course.
It's just an act we put on.
Well, so we want to get our facts right, and we know it is being recorded, so it is kind of like a record. So even though I can't defend everything I've said, I don't think I've said too many things. Like,
well, it's funny you say that. I was watching an episode of Black Mirror the other week.
Right.
You ever seen that episode where it's called, I think it's called I'll Be Right Back.
No.
Where that guy gets killed in a car accident, and then his girlfriend at home, who's pregnant, has his personality recreated as an AI.
Oh, wow. No.
Yeah, based on like his social media presence and recordings of him and stuff like that. And there was, of course, the real life thing with Roger Ebert. When he passed away, they recreated a chatbot that talked in his voice.
Oh, wow.
Because he had so many recorded hours of him talking over the years.
Oh, interesting. Right, sure.
So I was thinking, like, man, when I kick the bucket,
Yeah.
My son could probably take these hundreds of hours of podcasts and make like a dad bot.
That's freaky, man. I mean, I didn't even think about that with your son, but if you're, your son has hours of your voice to listen to, should he so choose?
Yeah, this might be the last thing he wants to listen to after I'm gone. But,
right.
So I mean, maybe I'll record a voice like I'm still here and play it in his room or something.
No, it actually is kind of cool. I'd never thought about that before, but it's a cool record for your son in the distant future.
Yeah. Think about it. Like if I could have hundreds of hours of my granddad.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Bullshitting with his friend about stuff.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I don't have time to tell the whole story, but we after my grandmother died, we were cleaning out her place, and we chanced upon a bunch of her old letters, and these were letters from the 1920s, and it was awkward because we didn't have permission to read them, but she had passed away,
right.
So of course I read them.
They didn't all start with like Mein Führer or something like that.
no, thank God they didn't. But man, it was fascinating.
I bet.
So to have an earlier record, just of what I would love, letters from my grandfather or my grandfather's voice. I would love it.
Yeah. Did you see the tweet I sent out last week about this woman who goes antiquing? This is completely off topic and nothing to do with Bangkok at all.
No.
But this woman who goes antiquing and she buys old letters at these garage sales and
stuff.
Oh,
right. That. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So I did see that. Yeah. So this is not what I found. Okay. It's not what I found.
Okay. That's good. That's good because she opened this letter from like, the 1940s or something like that. And it was just the most X-rated depiction of a lecherous weekend this woman was talking about all the positions they did it in.
Yeah, right.
It was hilarious.
Well, it's funny because when you think of the past, you always picture it being so conservative, right?
Right. If that was the case, none of us would be here.
That is true. True that.
Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep it not too long this week because we got to get into a quick interview I did with Tony and then another interview I did with Evo. But we're really looking forward to season 5. We've got some really cool guests coming up, and I really want to make an effort to reach out to more experts. So if you are listening to this and you know anyone who is an expert or are an expert on any element of Bangkok, economic, architectural, societal, historical, whatever, we'd love to talk to you. We'd love to have guests on to talk about that kind of stuff. It's hard, like you said, it's hard to find people who speak English well enough, who are comfortable coming on and speaking in a public forum.
Right.
And who can speak, really intelligently about a specific topic. So if that's you or someone let us know. We're always looking for something like that. And I'm also going to make an effort to reach out to more high profile guests. We might have some sort of more high profile guests already in the pipeline.
Cool.
Just waiting to confirm some of those. But season 1, we had some ambassadors on. We had some Thai government officials, and that was really cool. And the only thing they can say is no and or get out of Thailand. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Anyway, so let's take a look back at season 1. Let's catch up with the original co-host of the Bangkok podcast. I got on the phone with Tony the other day. He's in Canada, on the west coast of Canada right now. So here is my conversation with one Mr. Tony Joh. All right. Well, we are super happy to have with me on the other end of the line the original and as yet not copied, not cloned co-host of the Bangkok podcast, Mr. Tony Joh. Tony, welcome, man.
Thanks, Greg. Good to be back.
Yeah, good to hear your voice, just like old times almost, sort of.
Yeah, but the audio actually sounds good now.
It's funny, man. When you and I did this, like we started in 2010. And none of this online stuff existed, or at least not in any form that we could sort of like easily use.
No,
we did it old school.
Yeah, it's so nice to be able to have access to this now.
Yeah, although, one of the things that we did right in season 1, which I still try to do as much as I can today, is, one of the big things we did right is we did everything face to face across the table.
Yeah.
And, you're talking to me from the other side of the world, which is good, but it still loses something in translation when you're talking to someone face to face.
I agree, especially when you're interviewing a guest. I think, remember that dude who showed up and with his hockey jersey because we were doing a show about hockey?
Oh yeah, and he was super nervous, right? Like he was sweating.
Because he thought it was like a video recording or something like that. And he's like, should I put my jersey on? And we're like, well, if it makes you feel better, but it's audio.
That's right. It's funny, man, because back then podcasts, like you would say, oh yeah, you want to come on the Bangkok podcast? And they're like, yeah, sure. Hey, what's a podcast?
Yeah.
And it was just this constant uphill battle that we faced with trying to explain to people. Now, most people know what a podcast is, but I still think that a lot of people still don't really understand the nuances of it.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a lot more people are listening to podcasts, which is good. But I think there's still some technological limitations for most people. It's not as easy as, say, watching a YouTube video or something like that.
Yeah, YouTube's where it is. They got it sewn up. And I still get all the time like, oh, where can I watch your podcast?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you don't watch a podcast. Although a lot of podcasts now have a video component. And people ask me all the time. And I'm like, you don't want to see me and Ed at 11 o'clock in our underwear.
Yeah, actually, people asked me that before, and I've thought about recording it like kind of Joe Rogan style, where you just like record the conversation. But I thought, no, I mess up too much, and I do too much editing, so I don't want you guys to see all that.
It's that's a huge thing too, because the audio version of the show, like we cut out all the ums and ahs, and when we make a mistake or something. But when you add video to that, it's just adds a whole other layer of editing you have to do, and it's just I don't have that much time, man.
No, yeah.
So where are you? Coming to us from, because I still get the odd question from listeners who say like, oh yeah, I listen to Tony's show and he's in Japan and stuff, but it's kind of hard to keep up with you these days. So what's going on?
Yeah, well, I am currently coming to you from Canada. I am in Victoria, Canada, which is on the east coast of Canada, on this island off the coast of Vancouver.
Wait, East Coast?
Oh, sorry, West Coast. Yeah, sorry, West Coast. Yeah, so I'm on the west coast of Canada. And I've been back here. It's a little bit confusing, but I've been kind of back here now for, say, about a year or so.
And you were in Japan before that?
Yeah, so I was in Japan before that. I was in Japan up until, I don't know, a couple of years ago. I can't remember now, but a couple of years ago. And then I left. I came back to Canada for a couple of years. And then I got an opportunity to go back to Japan and launch this travel business. And so I thought, yeah, that might be kind of fun. So I went back to Japan. Got it all ready, launched this travel business, but basically 1 month before the government shut the border, we launched. And when you run a travel business that relies on tourists and the government says, no tourists for you, the business doesn't tend to do very well. So the business kind of shut down, and I was stuck in Japan for a while because I couldn't get a flight out. And then finally I got a flight out, and I'm back in Canada now.
Oh man, that was just crap timing. But
yeah, unfortunate timing, but what can you do?
Yeah. So what are you doing in Victoria now?
Well, right now I'm in Victoria. I'm just hanging out. We're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with the tourists, if they're going to be allowed back this year or whatnot. And so I bought a motorcycle and basically driving around exploring the island, waiting to see what happens.
Damn, dude, you're living La Vida Loca. Sounds much more exciting. That's awesome. Victoria is such a great city. I spent years there when I was a kid, and my uncle still lives there, and I got a whole bunch of friends who live in Victoria.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny change from Tokyo, because Tokyo is a city with like 30 million people, and Victoria is a city with like 300,000 people. So, I love getting out on my motorbike and going up island and into the wilderness, and there's absolutely no one around. It's quite a nice change from, the hustle and bustle of Tokyo.
Yeah, I've got a friend who lives in Nakusp.
Oh, yeah.
And every once in a while, I'll just sort of drop a pin near where she lives and look around on Google Street View and be like, man, it's just that, I miss sort of sitting on the side of a road and not having any sounds except birds and bears crapping in the woods,
I remember when I lived in Bangkok along Sukhumvit, near where I was, I lived in that Tonglao area, and along Sukhumvit, there's all those street sellers selling T-shirts and all that.
Yeah.
And I noticed a lot of them were deaf because they were always signing to each other.
Okay.
And I thought, like, I remember when I first saw them, I thought, like, wow, these people, man, what a busy place to have a business, Sukhumvit is so busy and all that. And then I noticed that they were deaf. And I thought, man, they don't even realize how noisy this area actually is.
Dude, that's I've never thought of that before. They were probably just like super zen and peaceful, right?
Totally, yeah. They don't even realize like how chaotic their city is, but they're just, they're all sitting there, standing around and selling T-shirts. I remember watching them like selling T-shirts to tourists and whatnot, and man, they were really great at it. Without having to speak or anything, they were like signing away and negotiating with calculators and all that. And I thought, wow, these guys are really experts at that.
That's cool. Every once in a while, I'll be driving down Sukhumvit or Rama 4 or something, and I'll see some dude sleeping in like on the verge between the lanes, you know.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I'm thinking like you couldn't pick a worse place to sleep, but maybe he's one of those deaf guys. Maybe he's just having like the coziest nap of his life. That's funny. So what's going on with COVID there? I hate to bring up the overwhelming news story, but I mean, Jesus.
Well, I think we're kind of on semi lockdown. We're not really supposed to travel. A whole bunch of snowbirds Canadians who go down to Florida or Mexico for the winter flew back because the government put in this policy there. If you come back, you have to stay in a government appointed hotel for 3 days while you quarantine. And the hotels near the airport are usually fairly expensive, upwards
Right.
of say $500 a night. So
Holy crap.
yeah, so no one really wants to spend like a couple of grand just stay in a hotel for 2 or 3 days or 3 days. So everyone kind of flew back. So we're kind of tentatively not really supposed to travel or leave the country or anything like that right now. And they're slowly starting to vaccinate people. It's funny, I saw on the news the other day, they said like the schedule, and they're like, okay, in like March, everyone over 95 in Newfoundland is going to get vaccinated. And I'm like, what, like the 3 people in Newfoundland that are over 95? Like, what the hell? Like, and so
I
I
thought they
looked
would
at the
just drink a
schedule.
big bottle of Screech to kill all the germs in their body.
No kidding. Like I looked at the schedule, and like my age bracket, we're like, scheduled for like September or October, like way far out into the year.
Oh, man, I've read that Canada is not doing well in terms of its rollout. Like it's one of the like of all the developed countries, it's like the
60th.
third last place or something.
They started off really great apparently, and I don't know what they did or what's the problem, but I think they sent all the vaccines that they had to like the native communities up north or whatever they did. But yeah, suddenly we're like 60th in the world. They say they're vaccinating more people per day in America than the total people in Canada. Like, so I don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, if you're 85 plus, you're pretty good to go. But I mean, like literally, how many people are there like that in Canada?
You're going to be like one of those guys in Florida, those 2 guys that dressed up as old ladies in a car and tried to get a shot.
Yeah, I saw that.
Would you rather be in Canada for all of this hullabaloo, or would you rather still be in Asia for this?
The thing is, this hasn't affected me too much because the businesses are kind of somewhat open here. I'm just really enjoying I came to Canada to get away from people and get away from crowds anyways, right? So I'm having lots of fun going mountain biking, going hiking, getting on my motorcycle and getting out away from the city and away from people. So if I was in Japan, I couldn't do that because there's people everywhere in Japan. You know what I mean? So here in Canada, I love being able to go out and just get away from everybody. So the COVID hasn't really affected me too much. Just travel plans or everything put on hold. But I kind of thought that, a whole year this year, we're not going to be able to travel anyways. And so when the business in Japan shut down, I was like, okay, so I bought a motorbike. I thought I'll explore BC and kind of explore Canada a bit during this time.
That's awesome. For listeners who haven't been to the west coast of Canada, BC, British Columbia is just the most unbelievably gorgeous, picturesque province. It's paradise.
Yeah,
really
I mean,
amazing.
it's the scenery is really amazing, and I think a lot of people when they kind of live in BC, like when I lived in Vancouver, I never went exploring. You know what I mean? So I think it'd be kind of fun to actually look around and see what the province is like.
Man, I can't tell you how many times I'm walking down Sukhumvit, tripping over potholes, and turning up my music to drown out the from the motorcycles. And I'm thinking, like, God, I didn't get out to K country, to Kananaskis, to like the mountains and the foothills of Alberta where I lived. I got out there like 3 times in the 20 years I lived there, and it was just such a waste. I regret it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of. We're starting to head into spring now, and so we're starting to get a little bit warmer. Really looking forward to getting on the bike and exploring, kind of these remote areas of British Columbia.
That's incredible. Do you? Let me ask you a question because I think this comes up on the podcast from time to time, and I think you and I have talked about. Last time we checked in, I think you came on for a full show to talk about moving back home and reverse culture shock, etc. Last season, that would be season 3, I guess. Man, you know how it is. All these podcast episodes just kind of mash together into your brain. You can't tell where one ends and where one begins. But how is your life like? Was it easy for you to readjust now after sort of bouncing back and forth between Asia and Canada for so long?
Well, I remember last time we talked, I was still living in Japan. I think actually that was the time when I was kind of living in Canada and I was temporary in Japan setting up that business. And so
Yeah.
now I've been back in Canada for almost a year now. And the thing that kind of struck me about Victoria, and actually to be honest, like Vancouver and BC and all that as well, is that while I enjoy the remoteness, I enjoy being able to access nature and all that, Victoria, and I would say to some degree Vancouver and BC is a little bit more. There's a Thai word for it that describes it really well, and I'm going to butcher the Thai pronunciation. So Thai people, please forgive me. But the Thai word is oh shit, well, what's the Thai word? It's mano,
Banok.
banok, yeah, like
Banok.
countryside, like.
Yeah, sort of like, so this sort of like Venn diagram between country, hick, redneck,
Yeah.
and bumpkin, I guess.
We don't have a really good equivalent English word for that. In Japanese, there's a word called inaka, which has the same meaning as the Thai word.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So I found that when I came back to Victoria, I was a little bit kind of disappointed at the kind of countryside mentality that seems to exist over here.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Basically, if it wasn't for the government, so government's in Victoria, capital of British Columbia, so a lot of government here. If it wasn't for government and to some degree tourism, this would just be a hick town, a nice looking hick town on an island, basically.
It is a beautiful town.
So and that kind of mentality influences a lot of the policy that the city implements and decisions made by people in charge and whatnot. And so coming from a city like Tokyo or even Bangkok, which feels a little bit more modern, I would say, a little bit more progressive, I find it a little bit frustrating to come back to here, and it's like it just feels like I've gone back in time a few decades or so.
So living in a Trailer Park Boys episode?
Yeah, kind of like that. So
you and Bubbles hanging out.
Yeah, that was a bit of an adjustment for me and a bit of a shock. I was kind of surprised at that.
The thing that I've mentioned on the show too is that because my wife and I have conversations off and on over the past years, especially now that we have a kid who's 6 now. We always think like, well, should we move? Should we make the move? And, when I think of Canada, what I'm picturing in my mind, that country doesn't exist anymore. That's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So for me, if I moved back, it would almost be like I was moving to like an English speaking country in Europe.
Yeah.
Because it would, I mean, it's not exactly the same, but that's just one thing that I'm thinking about. Like, I don't know anything about the pop culture, the politics. And what is funny? I was listening to a podcast today, this really interesting podcast I like called 20,000 Hertz, which is a podcast about sound design. And they did an episode about the McDonald's I'm Lovin' It music that they created. And I realized I've never heard that music. I've seen the slogan all over the place, and I've seen, McDonald's I'm Lovin' It, blah, blah, blah. But there's this whole thing about how the McDonald's I'm Lovin' It music is ubiquitous everywhere in Canada, or like everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
But I don't watch TV with ads. I don't listen to radio with ads. So I've never heard it. And I was like, man, I'm really out of touch. I don't even know the McDonald's, like TV jingles.
Well, what's funny is every now and then I see like these lists on BuzzFeed that get kind of pushed, around social media. Like I was reading one the other day. It said like, 10 most sad TV episodes ever or something like that. And I'm just like, I'm scrolling through this list And I'm like, I don't know any of these shows. Where's MASH or Three's Company or Friends or something like that? You know what I mean? I'm like, who the hell are all these people? I don't know who these people are.
Yeah, it's like when you're looking at the like celebrity gossip and you're like, who? Every time you flip a new page, you're like, who is this? Who are these idiots? I don't know these people. And then you just feel like you're an old man shaking your fist saying, get off my lawn. So,
but it's funny that you mentioned like moving to an English speaking European country, because that's actually my next plan. So I don't think that I'll end up going back to Japan, because I don't think the tourism business is going to bounce back anytime soon. So my next plan actually is to make my way back to Europe, because I used to live in Germany before. And I actually came up with this plan when I was in Japan. Is I thought, I really want to live in an English-speaking country again, like the next country I move to, because I just absolutely suck at learning languages. And I was going to go back to Europe, but I didn't really want to live on the UK, because I kind of wanted to live on the mainland again.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine lives in the Netherlands. And she says the Netherlands, their English, what's it called? English comprehension? No.
Proficiency?
Like Proficiency, yeah, is really high. It's one of the highest in Europe. Second is Sweden. And I was really, actually, when I went to Sweden a couple of years ago, it was a shock to me that everyone spoke English so well there. Because I'm used to Japan where no one speaks English, right?
Right.
And I went to Stockholm, and my first question to almost anybody when I was in Japan is like, "Do you speak English?" And then when I did that when I was in Stockholm, people were looking at me like, and they replied like in a perfect English, no accent, no nothing, just like, "Yes, of course we do." I'm like, "Oh, sorry." Like it literally felt like I was in Vancouver. I was such a shock to me.
That was really a shock to me too, because when I came out of my Bannock hometown in Alberta, and I came to Asia, and I started sort of meeting people especially from Europe, and you're like, oh my God, everyone speaks 5 languages.
Yeah, I know. It's so embarrassing.
It totally is.
What I hate about it is like everyone, like all these Europeans who speak like 4 or 5 languages, they're so impressed that we speak English fluently, natively. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, I wish I could speak English as well as you do. And I'm like, dude, you speak 5 languages. So what? Your English isn't that great. Like, who cares? I speak one language sort of well. I mean,
with a
big deal. Like besides your understanding of grammar and English structure is probably way better than mine. Like, if you ask me a rule about English, my answer is, I don't know. It just sounds better that way. Like, I don't know what the rules are.
A friend of mine said just the exact same thing, and he's like, when someone compliments you on your knowledge of like German, when you have 3 words in your vocabulary, he said, it feels like they're clapping for the retarded son of a nobleman.
So yeah, that's my plan, is to like make my way. I like to live back in Europe, and preferably an English-speaking country. And so I think I'll try to make my way over to the Netherlands as soon as COVID allows us to travel again.
I do love the Netherlands. Amsterdam is an incredible city.
Yeah, I think it'd be kind of fun.
There's more to it than in Amsterdam, but
yeah. But I like the idea. I used to, like I said, I lived in Germany before, and I kind of like the idea of being able to live in a country and being able to explore the neighboring countries. And it's one of the things that I kind of found a little bit frustrating about Japan is obviously it's an island, so it's hard to get on and off. And now I live on an island again. Vancouver Island is hard to get on and off. So I like the idea of kind of being able to live in a country where I could just hop on my bike or get in my car or whatever and go visit another country within a few hours. So
right. So you're moving up the scale of the size of the land masses that you live on. Eventually you're going to end up in Africa or something.
Well, my girlfriend's Russian, so I may end up back in Russia, some tiny village in northern Siberia or something.
In the Gulag. Well, that sounds cool, man. And it's good to hear you're safe and sound back in Victoria, which is a lovely city. I mean, there are much worse places to be stuck. So
sure, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
That's all right.
Yeah, and like I said, it hasn't really bothered me too much. So, I'm happy just to let everybody get their vaccine and for everything go back to normal.
Right, all those geezers in the East Coast.
Yeah.
Are you working on any projects, like any podcasts or digital stuff like that?
Well, we'll be launching the Tokyo podcast again. I have a new sponsor in Japan who wants me to launch it. So I'm just right now researching guests and probably launch that again next week or so.
Cool. That's what, TokyoPodcast.com, right?
Yeah, TokyoPodcast.com. Yeah. The
Cool.
On and Off podcast. It's like it literally keeps coming back from the dead.
The zombie
I think this is
cast.
the third time I've like resurrected it.
Hey man, if the demand is there, after you moved to Japan after season 1 of the Bangkok podcast, like when I met Evo, he's like, you still get like 1,000 downloads a month.
Yeah, my Tokyo
so,
podcast still gets like 3,000 or 4,000 downloads every month, and I'm just like, oh wow, who are these people?
yeah, awesome. So the demand is there. So
Demand is there, yeah.
Do it. All right, man. Well, good to talk to you again and catch up, and thanks for coming on the show. I can't believe we're starting season 5 of this thing that we sort of. You remember when we first started? We
hacked together.
Pantyhose stretched over
Yeah.
like a wireframe thing with a coat hanger in front of our mouths. So
yeah, it's really great to see that the show is still on the air.
Yeah, man. Well, if you're ever back through this area again, we'll have to do another interview across the table.
Yeah, definitely old school style. I wonder if that place on Tonglo is still there. Remember we used that room that we used to rent.
Yeah, what was it, like 600 baht an hour or something like that? This is before co-working was even a concept, really.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still there. I live on the other side of the river now, so I don't get down to that area too much.
Yeah.
But all right, man. Well, thanks for coming on. Good to catch up, and take care and stay in touch. And everyone else, check out Tokyo Podcast when Tony starts hitting it up again.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I really appreciated being on the show, and it was great to chat with you again.
Cool.
Yeah, man, I wish I knew Tony better. I've just met him a couple times at podcast meetups and things like that. But it's kind of cool that he just jumped on the ship with you, and you didn't know what you're doing, and he didn't know, and you guys both had enough trust in each other that you just winged it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if trust is the right word. I think we're just sort of like, well, I don't know, let's see what happens. but we made a pretty good pair, and we did some good shows.
Yeah, but he's the right. I think to do this, you have to have the right attitude and you have to be interesting in your own way, Yeah, and
you have to be inquisitive, and you have to be willing to do the work to ask the questions.
And it's wild that he went from here to Japan, which I think I actually know a couple of people who've done it, but I think that's a tough transition from Thailand to Japan. And he did that, and then now back in Canada, but maybe go back to Japan. It's kind of cool that he's kept in touch with Asia.
Yeah, and the coolest thing of all, of course, is that we've mentioned this on the show before, but you were at the launch party.
That's right.
Of the Bangkok podcast in 2010.
Damn straight.
Yeah. If only we knew. Yeah, so many thanks, Tony, for coming on the show, and it's great to catch up with you, man. I'm glad you're doing well, and hopefully we can see you back here sometime when you are in the region, at least in the hemisphere.
For sure.
And we can come on again and give us an update of what things look like in Japan. All right. Well, also in addition to Tony, we also checked in with our old friend Evo, who is co-host for season 2 of the podcast. He left to go back and be a grandpappy.
That's right.
To his lovely granddaughter Bali. So I got him on the phone too, and I checked in with how he's doing. And here is me talking to Evo. All right. Well, as we start off season 5, I thought it would be really cool to check in with the show's previous hosts. And we are psyched to have our old buddy, the OG podcaster himself, Mr. Evo Terra, back on. Evo, man, welcome back.
Sawadee Kap.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You still remember it.
Practicing my Thai, which is going away very quickly. But hey, man, thanks for having me on, Greg. Pleasure to be here. Nice to catch up with you, my friend.
Do you ever whip that out at a Thai restaurant in the States?
All the time. My favorite little place here is a restaurant called Glaiban, which is like the neighborhood place, I guess is the closest, my horrible retranslation of that. And it's owned by a couple. He's American, she's Thai, and half the staff is Thai. And every time I call it for takeout, I always answer they answer the phone with hello, Glaiban, whatever. And I always say, Sawadee Kap. And they go, hi, Evo. In that exasperated voice.
Oh, it's this guy that thinks he can speak Thai.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
Who's going to order toe jam and think he's ordering chicken salad or something?
Yeah.
So, man, we are still plugging along on this crazy Bangkok podcast thing.
I know.
Just about to start season 5. I mean, this is season 5. This is the first episode. And really, Tony and I sort of kicked the snowball down the hill.
Yeah.
But you were really, really responsible for reshaping it and helping it pick up speed. So as it were, because you brought a lot of technical expertise to the show in season 2, and gave me a lot of education about it. And so yeah, man, this is sort of still going partly under your momentum. So thank you for that.
I am excited to see that it's still going. I am happy that a bit of structure that I added to it to make it, something different than what it originally started with was good. And I'm really, here's what I'm stoked about. I'm stoked at how you and Ed have taken that structure and then continued to modify and improve it to make it sound like it comes from the two of you guys. As I have said publicly about the show is better now with you two guys as the host. You've really taken the ball and ran with it, and I couldn't be happier with the quality of show you two are putting out.
Oh, thanks, man. That's great to hear. And yeah, it's interesting because when you left, some of our patrons dropped off and left a couple of messages like, nah, I'm in it for Evo. And so, fair enough. But like I said before, the way I look at it is, when you do a podcast with two people, those two personalities or however many personalities, really sort of help define the shape of the show.
Right.
And it's like cooking a dish, but a different recipe is not going to appeal to everyone.
Yeah.
So fair enough. So
yeah, exactly right. So no, I'm happy with it. So for those people who bailed, screw them guys.
Well, let me ask you a general question then about podcasting, because you're still very much involved in the biz, which we'll talk about in a second. But do you think what are your thoughts on how often you need to play with the format of a podcast once it's established? Is it sort of an if it ain't broke, don't fix it thing, or is it something you should always be tinkering with?
There are a lot of schools of thought on that, and I really can't find fault in those who have found a formula and stick to that formula, because clearly it's rewarding for the people producing the show, and it must be rewarding for the people listening to the show. And right. Not everybody likes change. So I think people who find their rhythm, find their groove, whatever term you want to use for it, and can hit that consistently week after week or year after year, whatever, then I think that's great. I'm not built that way. I'm the weirdo that likes change, that seeks out change and wants to do things differently. So for me, I'm constantly tinkering, and I think, by the way, even the people who have a nice groove that's going on, I think they should still be tinkering to some degree and some level, right? You always should be tweaking and try and get things closer to that follow along that arc of perfection as much as you possibly can. Right. But for me, I'm a kind of guy who says, I want to do something completely radically different with this the next time I get behind the microphone. And I think that's okay. You just have to realize that your audience may not be as big of a fan of that. People typically like some consistency. So finding that delicate balance between satisfying someone's needs like mine as to have massive change, but without foisting that change on unsuspecting listeners is it's not an easy job for sure.
Very well put. So where are you these days? You are still in the United States of hysteria?
Still in the United States of lockdown of Americans, who like still in the states of virus. What virus?
Mask schmask.
Yeah, it's been tough, and I live in a very red state. And for the listeners who don't know what that means there are a lot of people here who are science deniers, vaccine deniers, and really authoritarians in hiding. But anyhow, let's not get political for a moment here. So that's a fun challenge. Now the good news is I live in the blue part of the red state. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I live in Midtown. And so I'm surrounded by other people who typically are more of a progressive mindset. So we don't often run into the challenges that you would run into when you get further afield and go into the backcountry, as it were, where things are a little more loose and goose. But
so when you leave your apartment in the morning, you just see nothing but like endless mask wearing hippies.
If I were to leave my condo ever, that is exactly what I would see.
Yes. Okay. So how are things in Phoenix? And what are you working on these days? I see you've got listeners can't see this, but I see your video feed, and you've got a very nice little background there with your podcast pontifications banner and your Simpler Media logo there, as well as some noise canceling headphones and your wife's arm.
Yeah, exactly. So things are busy. So, while I was living in Bangkok, when I was doing the show with you, Greg, I put out my hat and said, hey, businesses, who wants help with a podcast? I think I can help you do that. I started a company when I was in Thailand. When we came back to the States, that became my only gig, and it's going great. I produce, or my company, Simpler Media, now we're producing podcasts and doing podcast consulting services for businesses all around. Business is great. It's the only thing that I do. So I pretty much all day long, well, at least during the daytime, am behind this microphone or at an editing console or on conversation meetings with clients, advising them on how they can make their podcasting better. This has become my life, as it were.
I don't know you really well, but that sounds like an Evo dream job.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. That one thing that I've done for like 17 years now that I'm pretty good at doing and have some extremely strong opinions about, and I get paid for it too. Sign me up for that. So yeah,
no doubt. So any plans when the world returns to normal in 10 or 20 decades? Do you still think of Thailand? Do you still think fondly of it? Do you still think wistfully about it?
Absolutely. I don't know if I say it every single day, but pretty often I'm reminded of things in Thailand. There are things that happen, like occasionally somebody on a motor scooter will drive by and I'll go, there's my scooter. That was awesome, right?
That obnoxiously loud engine.
Yeah, I seek out, or I don't necessarily seek out, but we'll see a lot of movies now or television shows that are shot in Thailand, and we can go, oh, I remember where that was, and things like that. So that's always fun to do that. So we definitely think about it fondly. We were trying to find a way to get back. There's a conference happening in Phuket in October of this year, and we were going to try and see if we could get tickets into it. But things are still so questionable. we aren't yet sure if that is the move that Sheila and I want to make for that week-long trip. It'd be great, but at the same time, we're not sure what's going to happen.
Yeah. As we record this, we're just a few days out of the vaccine, the first dose of vaccines arriving in Thailand.
Nice.
Who knows how the rollout will go?
I'm sure smoothly.
Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter. They said the Public Health Ministry or some government organization put on a demonstration about how the vaccine will be rolled out, and it was basically a guy sitting in a chair getting an injection with a syringe.
Yeah,
and people are like, "Oh, so you administer with a syringe? I see how this will work."
Nice to see that things haven't changed all that much then since we've left. So yeah, that's nice. Right. We're kind of hopeful. That's really predicating everything that we're doing. But we're hopeful. Sheila and I are starting to make some plans for what happens afterwards, because we've been cooped up for a long time. Like everybody's been cooped up for a long time, but this is the longest time we've been in a single country. It's in several years. So we are definitely jonesing to get on a plane and go somewhere else.
It's got to be weird.
It's really, really strange. Yeah. Not being able to go anywhere. I don't think we've left the state in a very long time. So yeah, everything is just funky about it. But hey, this is the world we live in. It looks like there's light at the end of the tunnel. So we continue to wear masks and social distance and avoid people as much as possible. But on the other side, we'll come out of this and we'll get back to doing things. The thing I'm really excited about, Greg, more than I thought I would be, is the fact that Americans have adopted masks just like they were Asian. And I think that's going to continue. I don't think everybody's going to keep wearing a mask everywhere, but I think just like life in Bangkok, it will not be unusual 5 years from now to go to the grocery store and see a significant number of the patrons wearing a mask.
Right. And I think that's so great that it's like it's seen as sort of a mark of, like, a badge of I care about people. I care about my fellow citizens enough to mask myself up when I feel like I might be sick.
Yep.
It's like a civic pride kind of thing.
Exactly right. So that'll be nice. So maybe a little bit of Thailand has eked its way into America, and I plan on doing it from now on, right? Just hey, I'm going out. I don't know if the people around me are going to be infected or not. So if I'm doing close quarters stuff, like in a grocery store, why wouldn't I? Or riding on mass transit, absolutely, I'm going to wear a mask. Or flying in an airplane somewhere, I don't want to breathe everybody else's recycled air. I might as well do it, just one level of protection. Not being sick for a year now not getting a cold or the sniffles has been amazing. So I can either self-isolate or I can just bring a little bit of Thailand back to America by wearing my mask.
Nice. Well, it works better than sort of like zip-locking a bag of lap moo or something and putting it in your carry-on and hoping it's still good when it gets
man,
to
I can't get good lab wool. Glide makes good lab wool, but it's just not the same. Just not that. We need more offal. I don't think we have enough offal to make it really great. But
no, we disagree on this. Weren't you also the guy that put fish sauce on popcorn or something?
Gods, yes, I love fish sauce. We go through it like there's no tomorrow, Greg. So good.
Of all the things for you to take back from Thailand, the damn fish sauce.
I love it.
Vile juice. Well, thanks for checking in, man. I know you're busy. I'll let you get to your day. It's early in the morning where you are, late at night where I am. But I'm glad to hear that everything is going okay. And where can people follow up and catch up with you?
Yeah, so I'm all over the Twitters, just like my friend BKK Greg here. You can follow me. I'm at Evo Terra. That's the primary place I go. And if you're interested in the weird podcasty stuff I do a daily podcast now. Every day, well, Monday through Thursday, I do a daily short form podcast called Podcast Pontifications. And it's really a philosophical deep dive into why we do the things we do in podcasting and what podcasters should be thinking of. I don't know how many listeners of the show are into podcasting, but if you want to hear me pontificate on a daily basis and rant and rail at the world, I'm there on podcastpontifications.com.
I'm a subscriber. I listen to it. It's a great show. Some really cool questions you get into and some esoteric existential ideas that you ponder.
Let's call those evoteric from now on.
You're all about the branding. Never miss an opportunity.
All right. Well, hugs and kisses all around. Tell Ed I said what's up. And rock on, man. I enjoy the show. It's still great. I still listen, and I want you guys to keep going super strong.
Thanks, man. We'll get you back on when season 6 starts up.
Yeah, buddy.
And maybe we'll have you on in person when you come to Phuket in October.
Hells yes. Let's make that happen.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, brother.
Good to see you. Talk to you soon.
It's funny. I made a joke about transitioning to Japan. I'm not sure what would be easier, transitioning to Japan or transitioning back in the U.S.
That's a really interesting question, actually, because at least if you're in a new country, you're like, all right, I got this like new mystery to figure out. Whereas if you go back to your home country that's changed.
When you're a foreigner, you have the like play dumb advantage. You know, you're like, oh, I don't know the language, or I don't know the cuts. Yeah, like me in the tax office, you know. But yeah, when you go back to your home country, you got no excuse. You actually have to have your shit together.
Right. And they're like, someone will say, "What? Don't you speak English?" You're like, actually, it's my native language. I just don't know anything works here anymore. I've been gone for 20 years.
Right. Yeah, no, it's kind of cool that he has made Arizona work.
Yeah, good for him. And him and Simpler Media seem to be doing really well. He's put his Midas touch onto many, many podcasts. So I'm glad the format is gaining traction, and it's probably in no small part helped by him and the work he does. So,
well, he was key in kind of raising the level of the Bangkok podcast. No, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, man. He really sort of kicked things up a notch on the back end of things, like in terms of, you know, organizing the metadata and making sure it's posted in the correct format and getting all the behind the scenes stuff done that the computers can read and Google likes to see. All that stuff. He really helped take it to the next level. So
we owe Evo, no doubt.
Totally. So thanks, Evo, man. It was good to talk to you. And the arm of your lovely wife, Sheila, which was also in the frame partly. But I'm glad you're doing well, and I hope you can make it over here for that conference we were talking about. And if not that, then another vacation. We'll have some beer lao at some point, probably at Jack's back on the river.
All right.
Our favorite place. Yeah. So yeah, that's it, man. Thanks to both of you guys for coming on. And I think that's good, Ed. I think that's a wrap. I think we're looking forward to getting into season 5.
Nice.
And seeing where it takes us.
For sure. I'm in.
Yeah, right on. All right, let's get into some Love, Loathe, or Live With then, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. And this week it is my turn. Okay, Ed, you like coffee? You're Mr. Coffee.
Well, Nitro cold brew coffee, yes.
Oh, don't turn into a coffee snob for me. Well, actually, I only drink nitro, don't you know?
I am. I don't think of it as snobbery. I'm just incredibly narrow. That's a better way to put it.
All right. Okay. Well, what do you frequent Starbucks?
I do.
Yeah. What do you think now? And seems to be a spreading trend. There a lot of Starbucks do not take cash anymore.
Oh, dude, this is a great dude. I can't believe you brought this up. This is great because I was in a hospital.
You are Mr. Coffee. I told you.
No, I'm Mr. Nitro Cold Brew. No, but I go to I go to Starbucks a lot to grade and hang out. So I'm kind of a Starbucks guy. But I'm glad you brought this up because I was in the Starbucks at Siri Rott Hospital. To be specific, actually, they probably have more than one, so hopefully I won't get sued. But I tried to pay by cash, and they wouldn't take it, and it was so confusing. I was just baffled, and it was just weird and odd, I mean, the bottom line is
you're looking at your money to see if it's fake.
The experience.
This is legal currency.
I mean, the experience was a loathe, but because I felt like the clueless old guy, like. Digital money? What? I was just taken. I was confused, and then I thought maybe there's a language thing, and it was a bad experience. But I'm not really against the idea. Maybe if they somehow transitioned it, but you're right. It's kind of odd. There's just some of them now. They're just like, yeah, we don't do cash anymore.
I think there's a couple of reasons for it. The reason they post and the signs in the stores is that it's to reduce the potential for infection from COVID.
Right.
Stop handling cash and stuff like that. But I'm all for it. I think I'm a love with some caveats, because what you do now is you either just swipe your Starbucks card, or if you don't have one of those, you do prompt pay and scan a QR code.
Right.
Now, the danger for that for me is that the exact same thing happened to me when I was like 15, and the brand new technology in Canada we called Interac came out, and it lets you swipe your card and press in your code, and you don't even have to use money.
Right.
And dude, I lost track of how much money I was spending, and my bank account went down so fast.
Well, was it accurate? Were you getting ripped off, or you were just spending like a maniac?
I just, normally you take out like $20 out of the bank machine.
You can see it, right? You can see it, yeah.
So then like the next day, if you don't have any money, you're like, oh my God, I spent $20 yesterday. I got to slow down.
Right.
Whereas if you're just swiping your card all over the place like a maniac, you don't know how much you're spending.
No, I'm all for.
It's not really the same thing, but I like it.
I get the idea. No, I'm all for electronic money. So the bottom line is I had a loathsome experience, but I do love the concept. So I think I'm going to go with live with. I'm going to go with a compromise.
All right. I'm a love with minor caveat there, I think. Yeah.
Alrighty. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Deborah Claire for lending us her support at the show shout-out level. Greg, what did you find out about Deborah?
Well, I had a wonderful conversation with Deborah, and I asked her for a story about something that, that can give her some insight into maybe an adventure she's had in the past or something like that. And she told me a story that I can identify with so closely and made me laugh out loud. So I'm going to read her message that she sent me directly. And it said, well, I was on an Airbnb experience with a nice Thai girl who was showing me some of hidden Bangkok. I think that's what the tour was called. She showed me some great things, and we ended up near the old part of the city, and she showed me a medium-sized temple, kind of the shape of Wat Arun. She was explaining to me the history, and then she said, and then a few years ago, they found this temple is covered in semen, completely covered in semen. Can you believe it? Oh no, I said, looking up at this pretty high temple, confused and shocked that I'd not heard of this strange Thai custom before, trying to picture how they'd get that stuff up there. In buckets? Why would they need to do that? I asked myself, trying not to look shocked and disgusted. Well, you know better than me about accents there, obviously, but it took a minute or two to realize that semen to this Thai was cement.
Perfect.
I get that a lot. My wife says that, like, oh, like there's wet semen over there.
And you're like, I hope not.
And I got to be really careful now that my son his vocabulary is expanding very quickly.
I'm sure
that I've got to be very, very sure to drill this into his head before he starts running around school talking about, he fell and hit his head on some semen at home or something like that. I don't know what's going on. But then Deborah says, too funny. I so wanted to tell her she wasn't pronouncing it correctly, but I couldn't bring myself to embarrass the poor girl. So kudos to you, Deborah, for saving that girl's probably her face,
right,
which probably would have been very red had you.
But that is but that's a classic Thai story. It sounds like Deborah Claire's a perfect patron.
Yeah, exactly. And I got to say, this is probably unsavory, but if you can get semen up to the top of a temple, you'll get a year as a patron free to make a podcast. Maybe I can
so now you know where season 5 is going.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you for your support, Deborah. That's great. Maybe Lonely Planet or one of these guys could put a thing in the back like common misheard words.
That's good. That's a good idea. I like it.
Yeah, like excuse me while I kiss this guy. the Jimi Hendrix song or something like that.
That's great.
Thanks, Deborah.
Okay, a final thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yes, we do. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can chat with us online, send us a question or a voicemail even, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter or Instagram, where I am PKK Greg. Thank you for listening, everyone. Welcome to Season 5, and we will see you back here next week.
For sure. Hello. I'm so lonely. That is just a priceless. Those guys got balls, man, to make that movie. It's so goddamn funny.
I can't believe the success of South Park. I watched one of the first episodes in the first season of South Park. I watched the 2 years before I came to Thailand.
Oh, wow.
And it was so shockingly crude.
You're like this.
Blatantly, like in your face. Yeah. we were dying. It was Big Gay Al's Big Gay Pet Parade or whatever it was called. We couldn't believe it.